functions and you can discuss them. What was the social function of, for instance, Dr. Rajkumar? You'll get so many anecdotes. You hear so many people saying how Rajkumar was so impactful and how transformative it was. So middle class Karnataka largely, and not just middle class, I think across all sections of society, you'll find people who will say, who will talk about how Rajkumar's films were formative of their growing up values. So there's a sense of what he meant to the Kannada society. There's also a psychological kind of an impact that young people drew from Rajkumar. So you can talk about him as that. You can also look at the symbolic nature. What did a star like this stand for? And in a kind of elaboration of this, but also taking it, giving it a different set of implications. Madhav Prasad, who till recently was my colleague in EFL University, in his various writings on Rajkumar, particularly in his book Cinepolitics, where he looks at, where he places Rajkumar, Dr. Rajkumar, along with other stars such as NTR and MGR, talks about a particular kind of political context in which stars like these came to embody a particular kind of linguistic nationalism. So he's talking about, the linguistic reorganization of states, which happened in 1956. As you know, different Kannada-speaking territories came together as one. Just by, kind of drawing the map and saying, you are now Karnataka, you don't become Karnataka. How do you give a sense of we feeling? How do you make a sense of all of us as one? It is here that Madhav Prasad is talking about not just about how film stars like MGR, NTR and Rajkumar transitioned from cinema to politics, but that they came to stand for a particular kind of politics which he calls as Cinepolitics. So he says, for people, after the formation of India as a nation, Delhi bahut dur tha. Delhi was right up there, right? So there was a disconnect between the people and the state. So what these stars did was to create a certain kind of virtual or a shadow polity, right? So a polity where these people, where Kannadigas or let's say Telugus or Tamils felt empowered in the kingdom or in the republic of cinema. The republic of cinema that revolved around particular stars. So they particular stars like Rajkumar or MGR or NTR. So this is what he defines as Cinepolitics, a kind of virtual republic that gets formed around stars. And in the Kannada context, Rajkumar in some ways comes to stand for this kind of a virtual polity. So where people felt that here is someone who speaks our language, who addresses our concerns, whom we feel we can identify with. This is our state, our nation. Whatever India is, we don't really know. Or whatever the Indian state stands for, we don't really know. And that's why the connect. It is true that Dr. Rajkumar was a wonderful actor. I mean, you can, for those of you who are getting introduced to him through just this one song, which kind of increases the pulse rate of every Kannadiga here, you would have seen what a fantastic actor he is. So he is that. But it's also the moment, it's also the political moment, the linguistic reorganization of states through which different kinds of language-based territories which were under different political dispensations hitherto, particularly during the colonial period and even before that. They all had to now reimagine themselves as a new kind of territory and a new kind of state within the larger state, and that was the function of cinema according to Madhav Prasad. So it's an argument that is in some ways very convincing, which explains to us that others, for instance, MSS Pandian, who has looked at MGR, the Tamil context, asked the very interesting question, in his book called The Image Trap. He asked the very interesting question. MGR, who goes on to become Chief Minister in Tamil Nadu, went on to, do a number of anti-people policies. So his rule had many things that people, you could easily say, were anti-people. Yet those very people seem to love him and vote him to power again and again and again. So Pandian asks, what does it mean? Does it mean that people were gullible? And more or less, that's the kind of answer that Pandian gives us. That it looked like people don't have their own interest at heart. Maybe they are carried away by the kind of roles that MGR played on the screen. On the screen, MGR played the role of an auto rickshaw driver, cycle rickshaw driver, people from the subaltern classes. Maybe it's because they identified with those roles that what he was actually doing as chief minister, people could not identify, and that's why. So is it gullibility on the part of the people, that stars like Rajkumar, they vested so much love, so much affection, so much hope and faith. So this is one kind of a view that people don't know enough, and therefore they believe the make-believe world that is being created by the stars, and that's why they get carried away by the screen images. Whereas Madhav Prasad is telling us that it is people who shape the stars. So what Rajkumar could do or could not do on the screen is not determined. He may be a god, but he does not determine his godhood. It is people who determine what kind of roles he acted in. For instance, in one of my papers, I asked the question, his last, between 1954, when he plays the role of Bedara Kannappa, and 1966, when he plays the role of Raghavendra Saint. Between this period, he goes on to act in over 50 Bhakta films. Bhakta Cheta irbodu, Purandara Dasa irbodu, you name it, he has played. Ohileshwara, a number of such Bhakta films. What happens after 1966? What happens after Mantralaya Mahatme? Not only does Rajkumar almost stop, Bhakta Kumbara was the exception, and Shivamechida Kannappa, which was more recent, except those two, Rajkumar does not play devotional roles, which he was, so profoundly identified with. So one question that I asked was, how come, he almost stops playing Bhakta roles? And not only does he stop playing Bhakta roles, the genre itself almost completely disappears from Kannada. Bhakti Cinemanta or devotionals, which is a founding genre of Kannada, of Indian cinema, virtually disappears from Kannada cinema. So why does this happen? To me, I think the answer is, in many of these Bhakta roles, Rajkumar plays, the Shudra Bhakta, Bhakta from the lower caste, who is oppressed by the upper caste, denied access to God. He plays Tukaram as well. Denied access to God, denied access to spirituality. And in film after film, you see him, kind of getting whipped. If you remember Bhakta Kanaka Dasali, the famous song where he's begging for God to open the door and give him a darshana, and he's being whipped. It looked like it was untenable at a particular point in time for his fans, for his there to see Rajkumar in humiliating roles. So his stardom was so big that they wanted him to play king, not play a victim, not claim the spiritual kingdom, but claim, the world of the here and the now. So some of his most popular roles at that point in time, which Dr. Tarakeshwar has written about, the Bond films, so where he plays this modern swashbuckling kind of hero, which is again hugely popular. So it looked like certain genres start coming in, getting introduced into Kannada cinema. So Bond films, were not that. I mean, it's not that they were there in other languages and they come. In fact, one of our students, who's aware of the Telugu context, was telling us that after Rajkumar plays the Bond hero in Kannada, he goes to other languages like Telugu and Tamil. So it's almost as if Rajkumar inaugurates a new genre, for or in at least the South Indian context. So what genres come in, what genres stop, I think is also to a large extent determined by what fans want to see of Rajkumar, how they want to see him, what they want him to do, and so on. So in that sense, I think it's very important for us to see Rajkumar not just as an actor, but what did he do and what did he mean to Kannada cinema. 1954, historically speaking, 1954 till 1954, there are about 40 films, from 1930 in 2 decades. There are just about 40 films in Kannada. In the next 2 decades, there are 340 films in Kannada. So from 1954 to 1974, there are over 300 films that get made. And every third film is a film in which Rajkumar acted. Right? So that tells you, of course, it tells you his accomplishment, but it also tells you that Kannada cinema, the fulcrum, the bedrock of Kannada cinema, if today we have a cinema, there are so many hundreds of languages in India, but there are only about 18 to 20 filmmaking languages in India. So if Kannada cinema today is a film-making language, if it was viable to continuously make films in Kannada in the decades, Rajkumar played a very big role in establishing Kannada cinema. It's not as if Kannada cinema automatically, Kannada bhashe ide and takshana Kannada cinema agbekagilla. In fact, in the early years, if you look at the history of Indian cinema, in the early years, films got made, in very few centers of filmmaking. There was Bombay, there was Calcutta, and a little later, Madras became a center of filmmaking. In Madras, films would get made in different languages simultaneously. Let's take the example of a Telugu film, Maya Bazar. So this film in which NTR. So again, notice one more aspect in a film like Maya Bazar. NTR is among the many stars in that film, and who is to say that Savitri is not the main star of that film? She is, So, like I was saying, Mainavati in Abba Ahudugi is really the star of that film, and the male stars are on the periphery. Maya Bazar too, NTR is among, of course he plays Krishna, but he's among the many other stars. S.V. Rangarao is a star, ANR is there in the film. So what is happening in Madras was, there are all these people, these actors who are making films. There is a Telugu film called Maya Bazar which gets made. There's also a Tamil film, Maya Bazar, which gets made. Now, how do you distinguish between Telugu and Tamil Maya Bazar? Just change the stars. So, in the place of ANR, you get Gemini Ganeshan, it becomes a Tamil film. Okay? So, it was at a time, when films, there was just one center of filmmaking, and films were often made simultaneously in different languages. In fact, people who have recorded the history of studios and the studio era in Indian cinema, roughly 1950s, 60s, tell us that most of the time films were getting shot simultaneously. In the morning, you would have the Tamil film get made using the same sets. You would have the Kannada film get made at night, because apparently Kannada films had a smaller budget. So you could not afford to have your own sets. So the night shift apparently was half the rate of the day shift. So you would make the Kannada film, in the same place. So just by changing the stars, remember that it was the presence or absence of a male star that determined the language of the film. Maya Bazar in Tamil is the same as Maya Bazar in Telugu. Gemini Ganeshan substitutes for ANR. Like that, there were a number of films in which Rajkumar, just reprised the role that was played by MGR or NTR in the Kannada context. So you can also see what male stardom is doing at that point in time. Male stars are also coming to stand for the language, the particular language. It is one of the the pride that people say, the only Kannada, the only non-Kannada film that Rajkumar acted in was a Telugu film, which was a remake of Bedara Kannappa. Otherwise, he did not act in any other language films. So that tells you the nature and function of male stardom. They came to be identified with a particular language. The female stars freely circulated. Savitri is in the Tamil version, Telugu version, and any other version that would have come up. Even now, right? Female stars circulate around and among languages. The male stars get largely tied down to a particular language. So you, just by substituting the male stars, you could have a new cinema. So if Rajkumar laid the foundation for Kannada cinema, it is because his films were successful, so which made others say, we want to make more films, and that's how the Kannada film industry, largely based on the success that Rajkumar found, in his early years. That's how the Kannada film industry was established, I would think. So in terms of establishing a distinct Kannada film industry, he played a major role. I just want to say one more thing and stop with that. That is, the nature of research in film studies that is required. Since that's what we do in our department, I thought I must, tell you what kind of research is required, let's say around figures like Rajkumar, stars like Rajkumar. So it is one thing to say, okay, these are the films that he acted in. You can, if necessary, you can also do an analysis of his films and all that. As a preliminary effort, if we really think that Rajkumar is important as a